Hi and welcome along to this week's episode of CannaChat, where we casually chat about all things cannabis related. We appreciate you tuning in.
All views expressed in this podcast are the opinions of the host and in no way medical advice. Hi guys, and welcome to episode 5 of CannaChat. I'm lucky enough to be joined by Tim again today.
Hey Lee.
Hey Tim.
All good?
All good, Tim.
Cool. What is it we're going to be getting into today then, mate?
I just thought we'd go back to basics and talk a bit about hemp today. We've covered cannabis quite a lot, but we haven't really talked much about hemp. A lot of people are confused about the difference between hemp and cannabis, so we're sort of going to maybe clear a wee bit of that up for a lot of people, hopefully, and see some of the benefits that hemp has to offer as well as cannabis.
Yeah, I would be one of those people.
It seems quite a lot of people aren't sure of the difference. Hemp and cannabis are sort of classed as cousins. I would class them more as sisters, to be honest. There's very, very little difference. It's pretty much the same plant. The only thing defines it is the levels of cannabinoids. That's the truth. I mean, hemp has less than 2% THC in it, and that's why it's classed as hemp. Anything above that's classed as cannabis because it's got the psychoactive THC in it that makes it more, well, the class that it was more dangerous for many years, where now we're sort of saying that it's not sort of a dangerous thing to talk about anymore, THC. Hemp's actually known now as the world's best biomass source. You can grow 10 tons of hemp in 1 acre, and that can be ready to be harvested in 100 days. To create the same with trees, for talk's sake, you would be talking 50 to 100 years to create that biomass. That's it, ready to harvest in 100 days, to where you can actually use that for sustainable things. Hemp can be used for rope, it can be used for clothes, it can be used for hempcrete, it can be used for so many different things. It's been used for years for so many different things, and now you've got other benefits from harvesting hemp. You've obviously got hemp seed as well. Hemp seed and hemp seed oil have their own benefits. Hemp seed is rich in fatty acids and amino acids. One of the main things is the fatty acids it's rich in is omega-3 and omega-6. The key thing about that is that it's the ratio that hemp has of omega-3 and omega-6. It has a ratio of 3 to 1 from omega-6 to omega-3. So that's classed to be ideal for human consumption for health benefits. For the omega-3 to omega-6, and that's exactly what it is in hemp, which makes it the most beneficial plant for consuming those fatty acids. Hemp's also very high in protein and B vitamins. It's anti-inflammatory. It gives you a healthier heart, improves your skin. There's so many different benefits coming from hemp seed oil. Hemp seed oil can be consumed. It can also be used in topical oils as well. So people use it maybe in balms and lotions and things like that. You still get a benefit because these cannabinoids and things can still be absorbed through the skin. The only thing I would be concerned with consuming a lot of hemp seed oil would be people with hypotension, which is low blood pressure. Because hemp seed oil and hemp seed lowers your blood pressure, people like that need to be concerned and just keep a wee eye that it doesn't cause too many issues, can cause a conflict and drop their blood pressure too low. Bar that, most people should be fine, and it's actually quite beneficial to consume hemp seed and hemp seed oil on a daily basis. Another benefit of cannabis is it can actually be juiced raw. One of the main benefits of this, again, is the high omega-3 and omega-6, and again, the balance and the ratio is perfect again. That would be one of the main benefits. It's very anti-inflammatory as well. The other benefit of juicing it raw is you can get the benefit of all the cannabinoids and all the terpenes. I think raw cannabis is underrated. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not easy to stomach. It's like a lot of these sort of super juices and things like that. It's quite hard to stomach, but I mean, if you are juicing it raw, you can certainly use other things to make it more pleasant, like different juices and stuff to mix in with it. I believe it's underrated now because of the terpenes, the flavonoids, and all the other cannabinoids that are in it. You've got your raw acid form cannabinoids, so you've got your THCA, your CBDA, your CBGA, your CBN, all these acid forms that are all in the plant that are beneficial to you. But the main benefit to me is, I think, the fact that terpenes are still so underrated, flavonoids are still so underrated. They're all still in the plant and at high amounts, and that's the joy of juicing it raw, that you're getting all the benefit of all these flavonoids, terpenes. Sometimes when people process a lot of these oils and medicines, they've lost a lot of the flavonoids and terpenes through decarboxing or heating to certain degrees. They've maybe lost a lot of the terpenes. Where juicing it raw, you've got all those still in there. That, to me, that's one of the key benefits of juicing raw, because you can get those in there. And again, it's one way to consume THC without the psychoactive properties, because you're consuming it as an acid form, so you don't get the psychoactive feelings, but you get all the benefits of THC. Say THC is anti-nausea and stuff too. It's tumour fighting. It's another benefit of it. So THC has a lot of benefits, and when we can consume like that without psychoactive properties, I think it's a good way for a lot of people to get it in their system. It's also supposed to be very beneficial for people with Alzheimer's and things like that. With the cannabinoid profile in it. The only people, again, I would advise against consuming high amounts of raw juice cannabis would be people with gallbladder issues or people who are on medication to thin their blood down. If people are on medication to thin their blood down, there could be conflict. The reason being is that cannabis has one vitamin that it actually has in it, and that's vitamin K. Vitamin K can actually cause conflict with those medications that people are taking to thin their blood down. So anyone taking those capsules to thin their blood down, or anybody with gallbladder issues, needs to sort of take raw cannabis with caution if they are juicing it. Anybody else shouldn't have any conflict at all. That's two of the main ways that you can benefit from hemp, and certainly juicing cannabis. Hemp or cannabis, the same sort of benefits. They both get cannabinoids in them. Obviously, if you're juicing cannabis rather than hemp, you're going to have higher concentrations of certain cannabinoids, rather than the hemp will have lower THC and things like that. But again, it's down to strain dependency as well. All the strains, as I've explained before, have different levels of cannabinoids, different levels of CBD, different levels of CBG, THC. All those levels are different in each strain. And that's why it's important for each person to find out what's right for them, for their ailments. Because one person could take one strain, and if they're taking it for backache, for talk's sake, and someone else takes the same strain and tries to use it for anxiety, that strain that someone's taking for backache might be very high in THC, so it might send someone's anxiety off the charts rather than actually easing their anxiety. Someone with anxiety might want something a bit higher in CBD. They give them quite a good balance. I find a lot of people with anxiety tend to like a 1-to-1 balance. So for example, it'd be 15% THC and 15% CBD out by 1-to-1. That's quite a good balance for a lot of people with anxiety. But again, it's different. Everybody's tolerance and everybody's independent immune system is totally different, and they will adapt to different strains different ways. So again, it's a wee bit of trial and error when people are trying to medicate themselves to find out exactly what way works for them. But again, we're lucky now that we're heading that direction now in the UK, where people are being prescribed cannabis medically, and they can sort of play with different strains and see what strains are working for them and what strains are helping their ailments the best. That brings us next to flower. Again, the next way to consume it, we've talked about flower before. You're consuming flower, it would be cannabis, it wouldn't be hemp. You would be consuming cannabis because you want the higher levels of cannabinoids. Flower can be vaped, it can be combusted, it can be put into edibles. The way a lot of people put it into edibles is to create a butter out of the flower. So they'll blend the flour with the butter, they'll filter it off, and then they'll use that butter to maybe butter their toast in the morning, maybe butter their muffins, maybe put the butter into a bun mix and make buns with that, and then they're figuring out how many cannabinoids are in the whole block of butter and dividing that down for each bit that's in whatever they're making. So if they're using 100 grams in their bun mix, then they know how much THC is in that 100 grams roughly from making the can of butter initially, from they know how much is in the main bulk. That's one of the main ways of consuming edible wise. Say the edible market is vast now, and it's there's so much variety out there, and both in sort of underground markets and fully legal markets. But I say it's something that people tend to do quite a lot at home. There's machines and stuff out there now for making this simple, like a magical butter machine, where you don't have to overcomplicate things. It'll do a lot of work for you. I say the main thing to do if you are making edibles is to decarboxylate your cannabis. So as you activate those cannabinoids, if that's what's going to benefit you most, is the decarboxylated form. Some people might benefit more from the acid form of cannabis, which, as I say, would be undecarboxylated. You don't heat that. Some people might benefit more from that. I say before, it was just really recognised that you decarboxylate cannabis to get the maximum benefit, and that was always the way it was known for years. Where now people are seeing a lot of benefits from the acid cannabinoids. So THCA has a lot of benefits now, CBDA. These are being seen to have a lot of benefits, especially CBGA. It's so antiviral and antibacterial. As I say before, it's known to kill MRSA, the superbug, in the hospital, and there's very few things that do that. So it proves the power of cannabinoids when they are used correctly and used to the benefit of people. So we'll talk about a few of the benefits of cannabis when it is used correctly. One of the main ones is it's anti-inflammatory. It's highly anti-inflammatory. Most of the cannabinoids have anti-inflammatory properties, so most strains will give you anti-inflammatory relief. Pain relief, there's major pain relief come from a lot of cannabinoids. You have other cannabinoids give you anxiety relief. Cannabinoids can kill bacteria growth, they can inhibit cell growth, they can inhibit bone growth. The benefits of cannabinoids are vast, and they're so unrecognised still by a lot of people. But again, it's finding the right cannabinoid for the right benefit. I mean, CBG will be antiviral and antibacterial. CBD won't be nowhere near as antiviral and antibacterial. Other cannabinoids will be more anti-inflammatory. CBD will be more anti-inflammatory than CBN. CBN will be good for sleeping. It's good for sleep relief. So again, it's finding the strengths of certain cannabinoids and using them to target certain ailments for certain people. I think that's the way the market's going to go now, to where people are starting to delve into separating cannabinoids more and using them to create blends for certain things. Like I said before, terpenes were very unrecognised until this last few years, where now people are seeing the benefits of terpenes. Flavonoids are coming right up behind them too. People are seeing the benefits of flavonoids against another molecule in cannabis. There's so many things in cannabis that just are unrecognised still to this day, even though it's been getting researched for so many years. But luckily now it's a good time that these are being recognised, now that we're starting to push things medically, and people are starting to be allowed cannabis as a medicine as they should be now.
I find it difficult to wrap my head around, because flavonoids are what gives like the flavour and the smell, right?
Yes.
So
very similar to terpenes, because terpenes can give a lot of smell too.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, flavonoids and terpenes are very closely related, and that's the problem with figuring out benefits from them. People say 5-6 years ago, terpenes were quite unrecognised. Pardon me. So now flavonoids are just coming out of the woodwork, and people are only starting to talk about this now. A lot of people are still learning about terpenes. So flavonoids are very, very fresh, but they've so many benefits. They're anti-inflammatory too. They can kill pain.
Could flavonoids be giving you anti-inflammatory properties just through smelling the flavonoids, or you have to consume them?
Research hasn't pointed deep enough for us to find out. I certainly believe there are benefits, because when we're inhaling terpenes, we're getting benefits from it. So there's no reason that flavonoids would be any different. It's like aromatherapy. Again, you're going back to terpenes when you're talking about aromatherapy, because you're going back to maybe using a lavender oil or linalool oil. These again are terpenes. Again, all you're doing is smelling them, but they're making you feel relaxed. So you're clearly getting a benefit from just inhaling those terpenes. Flavonoids, I'm convinced, are very, very similar. I say we're still early in studies, and all this is very, very early days as regards digging into flavonoids. Again, it's still quite early days digging into terpenes and some of the benefits, but we now know a lot of benefits of terpenes, which is good. But like I say, it's basically very like aromatherapy. Terpenes is just the same as your lavender. It's like pillow sprays. You're getting a lavender pillow spray. It's terpenes. It's giving you the benefit of that. It's nothing more. It's not a magic ingredient in lavender. It's terpenes is a magic ingredient in lavender, same as it's a magic ingredient in cannabis. And the thing is, there's so many terpenes and flavonoids in cannabis yet to be discovered. We're still in, it's so early days, even in the States, not even just here, but even research in the States is still early days for terpenes and flavonoids. That really is, there's so many beneficial things in the cannabis plant. It's not just cannabinoids, and I think that's what people are starting to realise, and that's why so many people, I think, that have been using cannabis over the years and treating medicinally with cannabis are trying to use full plant as much as they can, simply because they're trying to include all those flavonoids and those terpenes to create that entourage effect we talked about before. As I said before, if you use 1 or 2 cannabinoids, you're getting a benefit, but the more cannabinoids and more terpenes you're adding on to that mix, the more benefit you get, because they're helping each other. They basically work together in synergy, and that's how it works. And the more cannabinoids and terpenes you get to work on your system, the more chance you have of creating homeostasis, and homeostasis is basically balance of your body. That's created through taking the right cannabinoids and terpenes. But as I said, again, it's knowing the right cannabinoids and terpenes for each person. I mean, cannabinoids can either suppress or stimulate appetite, and that's down to knowing which ones. Again, some people might have eating disorders, so someone might have anorexia to where they may need to stimulate their appetite. That's fine, certain cannabinoids will do that, but then someone else might be the opposite, to where they need to suppress their appetite because they're eating too much, so they would need a different strain or different cannabinoids, certainly to the other person who's got the anorexia. Different eating disorders, different cannabinoids. And again, it's the same with pain relief. Like I said, you could be giving someone the wrong cannabinoids for pain relief, and they're getting no relief, and wondering why they're getting no relief if they're taking the wrong cannabinoids. So if you're giving someone for toxic CBC, yes, it's got pain fighting properties, but not as good as CBD and THC. So you might be giving them the wrong cannabinoids, and then they've tried that and thought cannabis is no good. Not necessarily, maybe just the wrong strain or the wrong oil for you. So again, it's down to finding out what works right for each person, and again, just feeding that endocannabinoid system so it's at its optimum. I'm a great believer that endocannabinoid deficiency is still rife out there, and I firmly believe it is what is one of the key causes of all these autoimmune diseases out there now that weren't here years ago. Again, like I said, we had cannabis in our diet. Back to hemp again. The cattle were eating hemp, hemp seed oil. It was livestock food. There's another use for it again, is livestock bedding. It just keeps coming up every time you're talking about it. You find another use that it's being used for, or something else. It's used for so many. I mean, they believe there's over 5,000 uses for hemp now worldwide, and I would firmly believe there is. It's just hard to sit and pinpoint them all in a conversation. But I mean, if you sit and research them, I mean, there is so many different uses for hemp.
So quick question on hemp.
Uh-huh.
You said so hemp is essentially the same plant but with under 2% THC, right? Would 2% be psychoactive at all?
If it's classed as psychoactive, okay. It would be psychoactive in someone with a very, very low tolerance to THC. Okay, so someone who has maybe never used THC before and has a real hypersensitivity to it, because some people are hypersensitive to THC. I've watched people over the years who have tried to consume THC and it just doesn't work with them, because they just get over anxious and it just doesn't suit them. So they're super sensitive. So again, you have to find a balance that works for them. So they would end up consuming a 1-to-1 balance. It's higher in CBD. It has a balanced THC with CBD level, which obviously fights the psychoactive properties. But yes, in answer to your question, certainly people can get high on 2 to 3%. It's not a lot for, a lot of recreational users. It wouldn't touch. Clearly, they would smoke 2% and they wouldn't know they had a smoke, clearly. But certainly it's enough to have psychoactive properties for someone. Do you know what I mean? And that's why that's the limit. It is a very small limit, but that's why they put that limit down there, because there's always going to be, it's like all these pharmaceutical meds, the side effects aren't maybe always going to be there, but they're there for someone. And it's the same sort of idea with that. Someone's going to get high on 2%.
Okay.
And that's why they put that limit so low, but it is a very low limit, yeah, there's no doubt. But again, this is key to this too, as regards education. Now we've got doctors and GPs prescribing medical cannabis in the UK. To me, the key is making sure they have the education in this. They need to know what cannabinoids are beneficial for certain ailments, what cannabinoids are good for pain, what cannabinoids are good for anxiety, and so on. And not so much the terpenes maybe, but certainly the cannabinoids at these early days, maybe down the line, certainly digging into terpenes, but these early days, GPs and stuff certainly need to be well educated on cannabinoids, certainly need to be educated on the endocannabinoid system and endocannabinoid deficiency, which is clinically recognised now. It's clinically recognised now for having conflict with IBS, IBD, PTSD and fibromyalgia now is all clinically proven to come from endocannabinoid deficiency. So it's not like it's a hidden fact now and people like me are just claiming this. It's actually clinically proven now. So I think key now is just making sure that anyone prescribing medical cannabis moving forward in the UK has that education, knows what they're prescribing and prescribing the right strains for the right people, because it'll speed the whole process up. Because if they're prescribing the wrong strains for people, then it's going to slow things down dramatically as regards moving forward. Because if one person gets prescribed the wrong strain, they're put back now for a month till their next prescription. So that's a month, and then if they try another strain, that's maybe another month, and that strain might not be right, and then another strain, that's another month wasted. Plus that data then is negative data going into the system as regards NHS data, looking, well, this isn't helping this person, this is making this person worse. So it's actually making cannabis giving it a bad look instead of actual realistic facts, just simply because of bad education, because maybe people may be prescribing the wrong strains, and that could be a problem, I think. So to me, key is education again, back to education, but I think the GPs and clinics need to be well educated on the endocannabinoid system and cannabinoids and what cannabinoids benefit what ailments, and I think that's key. If that's done moving forward, then I feel that things can move forward really, really quickly, and we could really have medical cannabis thriving in the UK. And again, recreational will just follow a few years after that, as everyone knows. It just goes hand in hand. 2 years later, recreational generally made legal after medicinal proves its way.
Would that be a worry for you, Lee? The education of people prescribing the medical cannabis? Because for me, as you were talking there, I was thinking, if anything, it could actually be dangerous almost, especially people who are maybe really anxious. If they're being prescribed the wrong one, it could really set them off.
I totally agree, and I believe it could get cannabis a bad name to a degree too, because as you say, people just being prescribed wrongly, and that's all it's down to. It's not down to the cannabis being bad, it's down to the wrong strain for the wrong ailment.
Yeah.
And I think that is key. I'm not deep enough into the context of the clinics and the GPs, but I firmly believe that the education has to be there. It has to be there, and it's like you say, if they get it wrong, it's a big mistake. It can just reflect the whole industry from here on in.
Yeah.
I'd say bad advice. It just can reflect the whole industry from here on in, because, like you say, it can taint cannabis rather than show it for what it really is and the benefits of it. So anything can be used wrong, and this is one of the ways cannabis can be used wrong, and naively, just because someone's not trying to prescribe you the wrong cannabis, they believe that okay, this cannabis should be right for you, and they're prescribing that, but maybe the education hasn't been there.
Yeah.
And they don't know that strain, that that's high in this amount of THC or this amount of CBNs, maybe too much CBN for this person, make them too tired, they'll lose motivation, then they'll lose motivation, they'll lose their job, carry on, catch-22, roll-on effect.
Yeah.
So again, it's back to education, and it's always going to come back to education. It comes back to education and balance is the two main things with cannabis. And to me, if education and balance is in place with cannabis, the industry will thrive. It'll thrive medicinally, and then recreationally will come after. And see if, again, you're back to education and balance for recreational use. If people are educating themselves to the benefits, and they're educating themselves to the negative side effects, and they're keeping that balance, then there you go. It's back to educating the balance with recreational, same way it is with medicinal. It's no different. And again, the recreational industry will just thrive if they follow the same suit in my eyes. I say I do see a future for it here now. And now with people being prescribed medical cannabis in the UK and Northern Ireland on a daily basis, including myself now, then I definitely see it as a big leap forward. It's only progression, and it's only going to keep progressing as long as, say, education stands alongside it. And then we're back to balance, and people not over consuming it. People do get prescribed it, they're using it as and when they should be using it, and keeping themselves well balanced. If we carry on like that, I see a bright future for cannabis.
Cool. What a turnaround now.
Yeah, it's progression. So it's definitely progression. It's making me smile anyway. It's nice to see that people aren't made to feel like criminals for medicating themselves anymore. And to me, it's a giant weight off people's shoulders. I certainly know now, being a medical cannabis patient, that I don't have that stigma around me, and I don't have that anxiety of people knowing I use cannabis because I'm legally using cannabis.
Yeah.
That for a lot of people is a game changer.
I'm sure a lot of people had their minds blown the last time you mentioned it, but it still blows my mind that that's possible now. You can have a medical cannabis prescription in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Just to reiterate how strange that sounds.
It's nice though.
I'm sure, absolutely.
And a lot of people agree with me. Say a lot of people do seem to have been applying this last few weeks since we talked about it in the last podcast. So it's great to see. The more people apply, the quicker things will move forward. We'll collect data for the NHS, and we'll really get this pushing forward. Yeah,
supply and demand, right?
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So, well, I suppose we'll bring this one day a close, Tim, will we?
Yeah.
Happy
that
days.
was a lot of information. I am much more educated as usual, but even more educated than normal.
Fantastic.
So thanks for that, Lee.
Thank you, Tim. That's what it's always about, always. Thank you for joining me, and thanks for your time.
You're very welcome.
Again, thank you guys for joining me. And if you enjoyed it, if you give it a wee like and subscribe on YouTube and follow on Spotify, would really appreciate it. I'll catch you all again soon.
Watch the full video podcast on YouTube at Kaput Network.
We'd like to thank you for joining us for this week's episode. We'll catch you again soon for some more CannaChat. And remember, the real crime is knowing cannabis can help others, but doing nothing about it.